Neon bled across the slick asphalt as rain hammered the alley, pooling around the heels of Elise's borrowed stilettos. Thunder chased her heart as she ducked beneath the battered iron awning, clutching her invitation like a lifeline. Her breath crystallized in the damp, cold air, mingling with cigarette smoke from a cluster of men in sharp suits, their gazes lingering too long, predatory, hungry, calculating. A crimson-lit door buzzed, then swung open to reveal a towering man with an earpiece and expressionless eyes. He scanned her up and down, lips curling just slightly as he held out a calloused palm for her invitation. "Elise Moore," she said, voice low but steady, sliding the foil-stamped card into his grasp, refusing to let her hands tremble. He studied her one heartbeat longer than necessary before nodding, stepping aside to reveal a velvet-lined corridor pulsing with the bass of distant music and the electric prickle of forbidden secrets. Inside, the air was thick with perfume and adrenaline. Masked bidders lounged on black leather sofas, their laughter edged with something feral beneath the shimmer of chandeliers and ultraviolet lights. Her instructions had been clear: keep her head down, observe, and never, under any circumstance, get noticed. She was here to gather evidence for the story that would change her career. But as she slipped past a glass display case of rare jewels and velvet-cushioned cages, someone caught her gaze from across the room. He stood apart from the others, a shadow in an immaculate suit, posture predatory, eyes a piercing glint of silver beneath the rim of his mask. The crowd parted unconsciously around him, as if the air thickened where he prowled. She tried not to stare, but his gaze snagged hers, intense, magnetic, hungry, pinning her in place for a moment that stretched, breathless, until she forced herself to look away. A woman in a sequin dress staggered into her, muttering a drunken apology, and Elise's pulse tripped. She murmured, "It's fine," shifting her bag close, trying to disappear into the crowd. The auctioneer's voice, velvet and sharp, sliced through the chatter. "Lot 72, tonight's special acquisition, rare and unclaimed. Step forward, please." Elise's stomach dropped as guards swept the room, eyes raking over the guests. She shrank back, but a gloved hand clamped on her arm, propelling her into the light. Panic clawed up her throat as the crowd's attention turned, whispers rising like a storm. She struggled, voice strangled, "There's been a mistake." But her protest was lost to the furious hammering of her pulse and the click of the auctioneer's gavel. "We begin the bidding at 100,000. She twisted, searching for an escape, but the man in the silver mask was suddenly at the edge of the stage, his presence a tide that pulled all focus to him. He spoke only one word, "mine," and it was a low command that seemed to reverberate in Elise's bones, brushing across her skin like a promise and a threat. The room hushed as he removed his mask. The sharp planes of his face were beautiful and terrible, eyes flashing with something inhuman, something wild. She heard her own voice, thin and frantic. "You can't do this. I'm not." He leaned in, his scent dark and intoxicating, voice pitched so that only she could hear. "You are, Elise. You always were. And now, you're mine." Her heart slammed against her ribs, heat and dread twisting together as she caught the distant feral glint of fangs behind his smile. The bidding war never began. The crowd seemed to understand, melting back into the shadows, murmuring the name she'd only heard in rumors, Lucien Black. Lucien's hand cupped her jaw, gentle yet unyielding, forcing her to meet his gaze. The world narrowed to the storm inside his eyes. Elise tried to wrench free, but his grip tightened, not bruising but inexorable. "Let me go," she hissed, fury masking the tremor in her voice. His lips curved, bittersweet. "I can't. Not tonight. Not ever." Rain drummed harder against the windows as he swept her from the stage, the dark promise of the city and his curse closing in around them both. The elevator doors slid shut, sealing Elise and the Alpha in a glass capsule that hummed skyward, neon cities streaking past in warped reflections. She pressed her back to the cool steel, every muscle thrumming with panic and unnatural heat. His eyes found her in the half-light. Silver, almost luminescent, shadowed with secrets. "Elise," he murmured, her name heavy as prophecy. "You feel it too." She wanted to snarl, to deny him, but a shiver rippled under her skin, electric and wrong. "Feel what?" Her voice cracked, mouth dry, heartbeat wild as rain. He didn't answer, only watched her too closely, like a predator measuring distance to its prey. Sweat beaded along her collarbone, but the chill of fear tangled with something hotter, deeper, an ache she hadn't known before. The elevator jolted to a stop on the penthouse floor. She stumbled out, stormlight flickering over marble and glass. The city sprawled beneath them, endless, restless, beautiful. Was she trapped in a cage or perched on the edge of something vaster? She caught her reflection in a mirrored column. Her eyes were rimmed with shadow, hair damp from the rain. But what made her breath catch was the mark on her throat. Lines, delicate as ink, glimmered faintly gold, curling like an ancient script just above her collarbone. She brushed trembling fingers over the mark, half convinced it would smear. "What did you do to me?" The accusation was sharp, but fear threaded through every word. He moved closer, slow and careful, hands raised as if she might bolt. "It's not me, it's the bond." His voice was ragged, torn between hunger and regret. "It's fate." A sound escaped her, half laugh, half gasp. "That's insane. I don't believe in fate. My life is mine." For a moment, his jaw worked as if he wanted to argue, to plead. Instead, he said quietly, "Is it?" A new pulse throbbed beneath her skin, a strange golden heat that seemed to resonate with the city's electric heartbeat. The mark on her throat glowed brighter, echoing the city's lights, responding to him. Her thoughts tangled, reason slipping like rainwater through her fingers. She drew away, fighting the urge to bare her teeth, to run, or to what, exactly? She didn't know, only that her body was no longer entirely her own. Elise could scent him now, earth and ozone and danger, clearer than the perfume of the penthouse or the city's metallic tang. "What happens if I refuse?" she whispered, searching his eyes for any sign of mercy or weakness. Something flickered in his gaze, pained and resigned. The bond isn't a chain, but it doesn't let go easily. You can't outrun what you are. She tried to laugh again, but the sound stuck in her throat. "I'm just a human. I have a job, bills, a life. I'm not whatever this is." He stepped closer until she could see the tension in his jaw, the line of scars at his temple. "You're more. You always were. The city called you here for a reason." Her skin tingled, the markings warming under his gaze. She looked away, heart thundering, the city glittering dark and endless beyond the glass. "The mark," she whispered, fingers trembling over the gold script. "It hurts, and it feels like I'm changing, inside." His voice was gentle, but absolute. "You are. The bond awakens what's been sleeping, your instincts, your power. Mine answer yours." She met his eyes, fury and longing tangled in her chest. "I didn't ask for this." "No," he said softly, "neither did I." Rain lashed the glass, thunder rumbling. Inside, the air throbbed with possibility and threat, a wildness pressing in on her from all sides. Elise gripped the cool marble, fighting the urge to howl. The city outside pulsed neon and shadow, skyscraper windows reflecting endless storms, but inside the penthouse, Elise fought to keep her breath even as the Wolf King's presence curled around her senses like smoke. She straightened, dropping her hands from the marble, forcing composure into every line of her body, determined not to let Marcus see how his nearness unsettled her, how her whole world felt like it was tilting, recalibrating to his gravity. His gaze lingered, unreadable, sharp as a predator's but softened at the edges by something she refused to name, something that made her blood sing and her mind rebel. She turned away, busying herself with the rain-streaked view, skyscrapers slicing the night. This city of ambition, of deals and destinies, where she'd carved her place with grit, and now found herself entangled in a fateful bond she refused to acknowledge. Marcus's voice was velvet and command, low enough to brush along her nerves. "You're not a prisoner, Elise, but you're not safe out there, not after what happened at the auction. They'll come for you again." "Because of you," she shot back, pulse thrumming in her ears. "Because I belong to the Alpha now?" The word tasted foreign, electric, as if saying it summoned the very wildness she wanted to deny. He advanced a single step, measured, careful, and the temperature in the penthouse shifted, an invisible pressure humming between them. There are laws in the old world and rules in mine. Neither will protect you if they sense weakness." She bristled, chin tilting defiantly. "I've survived in this city just fine. I don't need a Wolf King's protection." But her hands trembled, traitorously aware of the bond, an ache in her core she couldn't banish. His lips quirked, not quite a smile. "You think this is about protection?" The room flooded with his scent, rain-soaked forest, crushed pine, something wilder beneath. "It's about survival, for both of us." She swallowed, wrestled down the urge to close the distance, to breathe in what called her deeper. Instead, she pressed her palms to the cold glass, staring through her own reflection. "I have a career, a team counting on me. What happens when your world collides with mine?" A soft huff of breath, almost mirthless. "It already has." He moved closer, only inches away now, and she felt every heartbeat as if it echoed through them both. "You're not the only one torn." Lightning split the sky, sharp light dancing across his features. Sharp jaw, haunted eyes, a king sculpted by darkness and duty. In that flash, she saw the pain he hid, the curse lurking beneath his power. "I don't know how to do this," she whispered, hating the tremor in her voice, both a confession and a challenge. His hand hovered near her shoulder, not touching, but she felt its heat. "Neither do I." A pause, heavy as thunder, then, "But I won't let anyone hurt you, not even myself." She drew a shaky breath, fighting tears she'd sworn never to shed for anyone. "I don't want to want you," she admitted, voice raw, "but I do, and it scares me."
The admission hung between them, fragile and fierce, as rain battered the glass and the city's lights flickered, 1,000 promises and threats in every reflection.
Marcus's eyes were wolf-bright, filled with hunger and restraint. "Then hide it if you must, but the bond will not be denied, Elise, not forever." She pressed her forehead to the cool pain, closing her eyes, caught between skyscrapers and storm, ambition and need, as the Wolf King's secretive world slipped its claws ever deeper into her heart. Days passed in a blur of rain-silvered streets and neon echo, Elise carving through her routine with ruthless precision, refusing to look for Marcus in the chrome-glass lobbies and crowded elevators. In the boardroom, she felt his gaze like static, prickling against the edge of her awareness as she discussed quarterly projections, her voice steady while her pulse thundered with memories of his touch. She lingered after meetings, pretending to read messages, only to catch the last trace of his scent, amber and storm fading along the hallway, as if he moved just ahead, always out of reach. Colleagues gossiped about the new merger, the rumors swirling like cigarette smoke, but none of them noticed the silence between her and the alpha, tense and charged, every word measured too carefully. One night, Elise escaped the glow of her office for the rooftop garden, city lights burning gold beneath a bruised sky, her breath frosting in the cold updrafts. She didn't expect to find Marcus there, perched at the edge of the parapet, his broad shoulders outlined in fractured moonlight, jacket tossed aside as if the rain couldn't touch him. He didn't turn. "You're following me now, little wolf." She considered retreat, pride bristling. "This is my escape. Don't flatter yourself." He laughed. Low, rough, dangerous. "No one escapes me, Elise. Not for long." The wind whipped her hair into her eyes as she moved closer, drawn despite herself. "I'm not your property." His jaw tightened, and for a moment, the wolf glimmered just beneath his skin. "No, but you are mine, in ways neither of us can deny." She stared at the midnight city, searching for anything to anchor her heart. "If I'm yours, it's only because you paid for me." He stepped closer, the heat of him a wall against the night chill. "Is that what you believe? That I bought you like a thing?" Her voice shook, barely a whisper. "Isn't that what happened?" Marcus hesitated, the mask slipping, something raw and haunted flickering in his eyes. "It's what I told myself, before I met you." Thunder rumbled as a fresh wave of rain swept across the garden, spattering them both. Elise hugged her arms tight, refusing to shiver. He shrugged off his jacket and draped it over her shoulders, fingers accidentally grazing her collarbone, a lightning strike of sensation that stole her breath. "Don't pretend this isn't real, Elise." His voice was ragged, tangled with longing and warning. "You feel it, even now." She clung to the warmth of his coat, hating how her heart stuttered. All I feel is trapped. By you. By this.
He shook his head, stepping back, a wounded king leashed by something darker than pride. You're not trapped. You're changing. That's what terrifies you. For a single heartbeat, neither of them moved. Caught between the city's distant sirens and the storm's relentless song, the world narrowed to breath, impulse, restraint. Then Marcus turned away, the wolf in him fighting for dominance, his silhouette dissolving into shadow as he vanished down the fire escape. Elise stood alone in the rain, jacket heavy on her shoulders, and wondered which was worse, losing herself or losing him. Elise lingered at the edge of the rooftop, the neon glow from distant skyscrapers making slick patterns on the wet tar beneath her boots, her breath quick and shallow in the humid, rain-thick air. Thunder rolled between the buildings as she forced herself to descend, hands trembling on the cool metal of the fire escape, her mind replaying the way Marcus's gaze had burned, possessive and desperate and entirely too wild. On the street, the city's pulse pressed in, headlights smearing gold and red across puddles, strangers brushing past beneath black umbrellas, and somewhere above it all, the knowledge that she was being watched. She pulled Marcus's jacket tighter around herself, inhaling the faint trace of cedar and bitter smoke, grounding herself in the last remnant he'd left behind. Her phone vibrated, sudden and sharp. She fished it from her pocket with numb fingers, the screen illuminating a single word, private. Elise hesitated, heart drumming, before pressing accept. The voice on the other end was velvet-wrapped steel, cold and certain. Miss Archer, my driver will collect you in 5 minutes. Do not keep me waiting.
The line went dead, leaving only the echo of power and threat humming in her ear.
Even with instinct screaming at her to run, she recognized the name that had spoken. Lucien Volkov, rumored to own half the city, the other half kneeling at his feet. A black sedan glided to the curb, so silent it seemed to cut a hole in the drizzle. The back door swung open, and she caught a glimpse of pale eyes in the darkness. Rain soaked her hair, cold crawling down her spine as she slid inside, the hush within the car a stark contrast to the chaos outside. Lucien Volkov regarded her with a predator's patience, fingers steepled, suit immaculate despite the storm, a silver wolf's head ring glinting on his hand. "I trust you understand why you're here, Miss Archer," he said, voice as smooth as the marble floors in his tower. She met his gaze, refusing to let her fear show. "I'm not sure I do. You could have called Marcus." Lucien's lips curved, not quite a smile. "The Wolf King has a weakness. I prefer to negotiate with the source." Her pulse fluttered. "I'm not a bargaining chip." He leaned forward, the overhead light turning his eyes to Mercury. "You're something far more valuable. I can offer you safety, freedom, but it comes at a price." The city blurred past the tinted windows, glass and steel warping into a fever dream of motion and rain. "What kind of price?" Her voice barely wavered. Lucien studied her, as if calculating every cost and profit. Marcus's loyalty, or his downfall. You get to choose which. A tremor ran through her, anger mixing with fear. "Why are you doing this?" He shrugged, elegant and reptilian. "Power, leverage, the old ways, call it what you like. Either you convince Marcus to align with me, or you both lose everything." A spark of the wolf's spirit kindled inside her. "You can threaten us, but you'll never own him." Lucien's smile sharpened. "Not yet, but every king has his crown, and his curse. Don't test how far I'll go." The car slowed in front of her building, headlights painting the rain in molten silver. As the door unlocked, Lucien's last words lingered like a bruise. "Remember, Miss Archer, in this city, loyalty is currency, and betrayal always has a cost." She stepped out into the storm, heart racing with defiance and dread, knowing the fragile bond between her and Marcus was now a target painted in neon across the night. Thunder rumbled over the city as Lila hurried into the lobby, wet hair dripping onto the marble, each footstep echoing her unease outside. An ambulance wailed past, neon lights flaring through rain-streaked glass. Even the doorman's wary nod felt wrong, as if the world had been tilted by Lucien's warning. She barely returned his greeting, her mind replaying Marcus's unreadable expression in the car. She pressed the button for her floor, pulse thudding, and stared into the mirrored elevator doors.
her reflection fractured between fear and a traitorous thrill she couldn't name.
On her floor, the hallway buzzed with voices. Two tenants arguing, doors slamming, the scent of ozone and fried street food drifting from an open window. The city, restless and on edge. Inside her apartment, she dropped her keys, scanned for messages, and found none from Marcus. Only a news alert flashing on her cracked phone. Violent clashes erupt in Tech District, police overwhelmed. Her stomach tightened. She knew this had to be about the Pax, the way Lucien's men had circled Marcus's club, how the air had hummed with barely contained threats. She paced, restless, and called Marcus despite herself. Voicemail, his voice cool and distant. "You know what to do." She hung up, cursing softly. Outside, gunshots punctured the rain, distant but real. Her hands trembled as she drew the curtains, the city's heartbeat pulsing through every glass pane. A knock? Sharp? Urgent. She froze, debating, then opened the latch to see Marcus, soaked, hair wild, and eyes burning gold beneath the street lamp's glare. He stepped inside without a word, water pooling at his feet. "You shouldn't be alone tonight," he said, voice rough, jaw clenched like he was holding back a storm. "I saw the news," she whispered, heart thudding. "Is it your pack?" He didn't answer at first, just shrugged off his jacket and tossed it to the floor. The muscles in his arms tense beneath his shirt. Lucien stirring up the others. "My men are holding the line," but he trailed off, eyes finding hers in the dim light. She tried to steady herself. "This is about the auction, isn't it? About me." His gaze flickered, haunted. "Your leverage, Lila. And I." He broke off, voice catching. "I can't let you be used against me." She bristled, frustration sharpening her words. "So I'm just another pawn, another thing to control." He flinched as if struck. "I never wanted that for you." His hand hovered, not quite touching her cheek, fingers trembling with restraint. "Then what do you want?" Her voice cracked with equal parts fear and longing. He exhaled slowly, the air between them thick with unspoken truths. "I want you safe, but I want you with me too. I don't know how to have both." Outside, sirens wailed closer, blue and red sweeping across their faces, the city's violence pressing in, their shadows tangled by flickering light. Her apartment felt suddenly too small, their proximity electric, the question of trust, a live wire between them, ready to spark or burn. Marcus's breath was shallow. "Everything's changing, Lila. The Pax are choosing sides. I can't protect you if you don't tell me what you're planning." She hesitated, torn between defiance and the pull of his voice, the wildness beneath his skin. "You still don't trust me." A muscle leapt in his jaw. "After tonight, trust is all I have left." Thunder crashed above them, the city at war, and between them, a fragile, dangerous hope flickered in the neon-lit dark. Rain drummed against the glass as Lucien stalked to the window, fists clenched tight against the storm's rhythm, his silhouette fractured by city lights and lightning. Celine pressed her back to the cool marble, heartbeat stuttering, watching the way tension carved his shoulders. His power barely leashed, yet something in him trembling on the edge. Somewhere far below, sirens wailed, echoing up the skyscraper's bones, but Lucien's focus was pinned on her, on the bond humming like live wire beneath their skin. He exhaled, voice rough. "You shouldn't have come to me in the club. The city's eyes never close. Every rival feels your presence now." She tried to laugh, but it sounded brittle in the cavernous room. "I didn't exactly have a choice. Or do you think I'm just eager to play the part of trophy?" His jaw tightened, a flash of regret, or was it longing, in the gold of his gaze. "I'd burn the world before I let them use you." Celine crossed her arms, bracing herself. "But you'd still keep me locked here, safe but caged. Tell me, Lucien, what's the difference?" He turned, pacing, the wolf in him pacing too, hunger and violence, and something softer flickering in his eyes. "The difference is that here, I can protect you." She stepped closer, rain-slick neon painting her face in shards of blue and crimson. "You think you can protect me from all of them, even from yourself?" Lightning flared, and for a moment she saw the shadow of the beast beneath his skin, his control so precise it hurt to look at. "Especially from myself," he murmured, voice breaking on the edge of confession. The tension between them sharpened, electric and raw,
each breath a battle. Celine felt the heat of his gaze, the weight of everything unsaid, how the bond pulled her closer, even as every instinct screamed to run.
Lucien, she started, uncertainty threading her tone. He closed the distance in 2 strides, stopping just short of touching her. If the council suspects what you are to me, what I feel. His throat bobbed, words trapped on the tip of disaster.
Celine's pulse quickened, not with fear, but a reckless yearning. You're the king. Isn't your will law?
A shadow crossed his face, old grief bleeding through. Even kings bleed for what they love, especially kings. The confession lingered between them, fragile as moth wings. She studied him, the Wolf King, the man, ruthless, haunted, desperate for control. And if I don't want to be your weakness? His hand hovered, trembling, fingers splayed, close enough to feel the electric spark where their skin nearly touched. You're not my weakness, Celine. You're the only thing keeping me human. Thunder rattled the windows, rattling loose something inside her. Then let me stand with you, Lucien, not as a prize. As your equal. His laughter was a broken thing, soft and bitter. They would tear you apart for it.
She stepped in, closing the final inch, her voice barely more than a whisper. Let them try.
Their eyes met, molten gold and storm gray, and the city outside faded to nothing but the sound of their heartbeats, defiant and wild. For a moment, Lucien let his guard slip, longing etched in every hard line of his face. Celine, you have no idea what you're asking.
She reached for him, fingers brushing his wrist, the spark between them undeniable. Then show me.
He drew in a shaky breath, torn between his duty and the impossible pull of fate, and for the first time, Celine saw fear in the eyes of the Wolf King. The air in Lucien's penthouse seemed to thicken, the city's pulse muffled by velvet rain against the glass. Celine's skin tingled where her hand hovered close to his, the electric hush between them brittle as glass. He pulled away, a flicker of pain sharpening his features. You want answers? His voice was a rasp, ancient and raw beneath its cultured edge. But some truths, they're chains, Celine. They bind tighter than any contract. Her frustration burned bright, but she forced herself calm, tracing the lines of the skyline behind his silhouette, neon blue slicing the darkness, lightning far off. I'm not afraid of the truth. I'm afraid of being kept in the dark. He laughed, humorless. You should be afraid. If you knew what I was, what I'm bound to. Lucien cut himself off, jaw clenched, knuckles white around the glass tumbler he gripped. She studied him, heart a steady thrum. You bought me at that auction. But it wasn't about me, was it? It was about something older, something you can't control. His gaze snapped to hers, silver eyes gone stormy. You don't understand the cost of fate, or the price of trying to break it. Celine stepped closer, every muscle poised. Then tell me, what binds you? Why did I feel that? She fumbled for words. That instant pull, like gravity snapping tight between us.
Lucien's mask slipped further. The curse, he whispered, voice barely more than breath. The law that rules my kind, we're chained to the mate fate chooses. The Wolf King is never free.
A chill crept over her, but she pressed. That's not all. I've seen the records, Lucien. The shifters who try to resist, they vanish, or go mad. His face closed, ancient grief flickering in his eyes. It's a sickness. Unmated wolves become monsters, destroy themselves or others. The curse ensures we find our mate at any price. Celine's heart hammered. And the auction? The way you fought for me, was it the curse or was it you? He hesitated, the answer warring inside him. Both, Lucien admitted, voice hoarse. The moment I saw you, the curse snapped its jaws. But I wanted you too, more than I've ever wanted anything.
She faltered, memories of his touch, his scent, the way his presence filled every inch of space. So, you're saying I never had a choice?
Pain twisted his mouth. Neither of us did. Outside, thunder rumbled low. Celine let the storm soak into her bones, searching his gaze for something real. If I walk away now, what happens to you?
He flinched, the wolf shining through. The curse would tear me apart. I'd lose my mind, my throne, everything. He sucked in a breath, desperation raw in his voice. But I'd never force you to stay.
Her own longing warred with fear. And if I stay? Lucien stepped closer, his shadow overlapping hers, eyes blazing. Then the curse binds us both, but maybe, together, we can change its terms. Celine reached out, fingers trembling as they touched his jaw. I don't want to be a chain, or wear one. His eyes closed, lashes dark crescents. You're not a chain, Celine. You're the key. Maybe the only one who can break it. A hush fell, charged and sacred. Rain streaked down the windows in silver threads, city lights blurred like distant stars. The silence clung to them, heavy as the midnight storm, each heartbeat echoing in the vast penthouse until it felt too loud, too dangerous to bear. Celine's hand lingered, her touch gentle yet unyielding, tracing the stubble along his jaw. Then let me try, she whispered, the words fragile but fierce, her breath mingling with his. A sudden clang shattered the hush, the elevator's security lock disengaging, a warning growl beneath the hum of city neon. Lucien's body went taut, every muscle coiled, eyes snapping open to blazing gold. He moved in a blur, stepping between Celine and the door, one arm outstretched as if he could shield her from whatever shadow pressed closer in the hallway outside. The scent of ozone, slick steel, and wolf musk sharpened around them. Celine's heart thudded wild in her chest, her own instincts screaming danger. She caught his wrist, pulse hammering beneath her fingertips. Don't do this alone, she urged, voice trembling but sure. I'm not leaving you, no matter what comes through that door. His jaw tightened, pride warring with terror in his gaze. My enemies want me weak, he muttered. You're the chink in my armor, Celine. They'll use you.
The elevator dinged, too bright and ordinary for the menace it carried. Shadows shifted in the hall, burly shapes in matte black, the glint of suppressed weapons.
Lucien's alpha presence surged, velvet and wildfire, making the air shimmer with wolf command. You stay behind me, he hissed, voice all gravel and promise. But Celine stood her ground, her defiance a flicker of lightning in his storm. You can order me, she said, but I choose you. That's my power. His chest heaved, torn between the ancient law of the pack and the new, trembling thread that bound him to her. He glanced back, agony in every line of his face. A thunderclap rattled the windows as the invaders stepped inside. Guns raised, intent cold as the rain slicked glass. The lead man snarled, "Step aside, Lucien. It's her we want." Celine's fingers dug into his shirt, anchoring him. "Don't let them take me," she whispered, fear and trust entwined in the space between. Lucien bared his teeth, voice rough with fury and love. "You'll have to go through me," he said, the wolf barely caged behind his words. One of the men sneered, gun trained on Celine. "She's just a girl, not worth bleeding for." Lucien's hands trembled, torn between the primal urge to tear and the bitter knowledge of what violence would cost them both. He glanced at Celine, question blazing in his eyes. Was she worth risking everything? Celine met his gaze, her own fear eclipsed by something fiercer. "I am not your weakness, Lucien. I'm your reason." In that breathless pause, rain, neon, and heartbeats, he made his choice. His hand slid behind her, holding tight, the bond between them pulsing electric. He lifted his chin, daring the intruders closer, power radiating off him like wildfire. "She's my mate, and I won't let her go." The men hesitated, wolf dominance prickling along their skin. Celine's pulse sang with terror and hope as danger crowded the room, Lucien's body a living shield. Outside, sirens wailed, distant and uncertain, as if the city itself held its breath, waiting for the outcome of this impossible stand. Celine's world narrowed to Lucien's warmth, the storm outside and the promise in his grasp, together or not at all. The shadows pressed in, the future uncertain, yet neither of them let go. A crash of thunder rattled the penthouse glass, casting blue veins of lightning across the city's veins below. Each pulse seemed to charge the very air between Celine and Lucien, sharp with anticipation. Lucien's hand trembled against her spine, a faint quake at odds with the iron certainty in his grip, his eyes molten with something desperate and ancient. "You have to let me go," he said, voice hoarse, "before it's too late for both of us." Celine shook her head, refusing, defiant against the wind's shriek as it battered the windows. No, I'm not losing you to them. Not tonight.
The elevator groaned somewhere far below, a metallic herald of approaching doom. Celine's pulse thudded in her ears, every sense sharpened, her mind racing through every strategy her life had ever taught her.
With a hiss, the elevator doors parted. Black-suited figures spilled out, their eyes reflecting the storm, unnatural, hungry, and old as the first nightmare. Lucien stepped in front of Celine, his body shielding hers, his posture both regal and feral. The leader, a woman draped in shadows and silver, tilted her head. Wolf King, your debt comes due. Lightning haloed Lucien's silhouette. He bared his teeth. You'll have to kill me first. Celine slid her palm over his heart, grounding him, grounding herself. She met the woman's gaze, refusing to shrink. He's not yours anymore. He never was. A ripple ran through the circle of enforcers, scent of ozone and ancient blood magic curling through the air. The storm outside mimicked their tension, rain lashing like claws against the glass.
The woman smiled, a slow, sorrowful thing. The curse is not so easily broken, child.
Perhaps not, Celine replied, voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. But chains can snap if you pull hard enough. Lucien's transformation shimmered beneath his skin, shadow of wolf overlapping the man, breath ragged as he battled the old magic's grip. Celine, if you stay, it will destroy you. She squeezed his hand, pulse against pulse. Try me. The woman raised a slender hand, fingers curling in a spell. Power spilled from her like frost, crawling up Celine's spine, tightening Lucien's muscles until he choked on a snarl. Celine summoned every spark of defiance, every lesson from a life spent outsmarting the powerful. She matched the woman's gaze, stepped forward, and spoke. Curses only hold if you believe them. I choose him. I choose us. Light exploded, a shattering, a wind that howled through bone and memory. Lucien's body arched, agony wrenching a howl from his throat, and the enforcers flinched, faces twisted with shock. Celine clung to him, refusing to let go as magic lashed at her, voices of the past shrieking, the city's heartbeat thundering in her blood. "Lucien," she cried, "come back to me." For a heartbeat, time fractured, city lights stuttering, the enforcers' silhouettes flickering like ghosts. And then Lucien seized her, wild and alive, his eyes blazing gold as ancient shackles shattered into nothing. The woman staggered, her spell broken, rain sluicing down the glass behind her. She stared at them, hollow and defeated, before melting into the shadow of her followers. Lucien was trembling, sweat beading his brow, but his arms tightened around Celine as if she were the only real thing in this reborn world. His voice was rough, disbelieving. I can feel myself. Celine, I'm free. She pressed her forehead to his, tears and laughter tangled in her breath. We did it. We did it, Lucien. Outside, the city's storm seemed to break, neon glinting on puddled streets as sirens faded, leaving only the two of them standing in the quiet after the supernatural war. Morning slid across the skyline in trembling gold, filtering through the rain-streaked windows of Lucien's penthouse, illuminating the chaos and makeshift barricades that had become their nightly routine in the wake of conflict. Lucien moved through the living room with a new ease, the twist of his mouth betraying awe every time he flexed his hand and found it fully his own. No shadow, no phantom ache, only flesh and will. Celine watched him from the kitchen, clutching her mug, the coffee too hot, but the warmth grounding. The scent of roasted beans and rain mixed as she tried to suppress a giddy, nervous smile. He caught her gaze and grinned like a man reborn. You're staring, he murmured, voice low, teasing, threading through the hush of the apartment. I'm making sure you're real, she replied, ducking her head, but her laugh trembled, full of something wild and bright that neither of them dared name aloud. The city outside felt altered, quieter, as if the buildings themselves were drawing deeper breaths, neon signs flickering with hesitant hope instead of warning. They spent the day together cleaning, tossing shattered glass, folding blankets, scrubbing away the evidence of a siege that had ended but left its mark in ash and blood along the baseboards. Celine found Lucien's coat, torn and stained, and ran her fingers over the embroidered wolf's head on the collar, a legacy as old as his family's name.
He stepped behind her, his arms circling her waist, chin resting on her shoulder, the intimacy a promise instead of a plea now. "You know," he murmured, "this place could use your touch, once we get the war zone vibe under control." She snorted, leaning back into him. "You mean you want my plants to invade your den of darkness and steal?"
He huffed a laugh, nuzzling her hair. "I'm not saying no to oxygen or color, or you."
Her heart stuttered, but she covered it with sarcasm. "I'll bring a jungle, and maybe a better coffee maker."
They worked side by side, Lucien occasionally pausing to listen, really listen to the city. "I can hear everything," he whispered once, and Celine didn't need to ask what he meant. The heartbeat of a metropolis mending, the absence of supernatural threat. That night, Lucien guided her onto the balcony. The city stretched beneath them in rivers of gold and sapphire. Rain clouds had retreated, leaving the air washed and electric. Celine rested her arms on the rail. "It feels different," she said softly, "like everyone's waking up after a nightmare and doesn't know if it's safe to dream again." Lucien's hand found hers, warm and solid. "We'll give them a reason to dream," he promised, the weight of centuries in his vow, but a raw hope bleeding through. They returned inside, where Lucien's phone buzzed with messages. His pack, scattered through the glass and concrete jungle, checking in, seeking guidance, forging new alliances from old rivalries. Celine drafted emails from her laptop, blending business acumen with shifter sensibility, her world of contracts and negotiations now threaded with secrets and loyalty oaths, each word chosen as carefully as a step in a dance. Lucien watched her work, admiration softening his features. "You're terrifying. Did you know that?" he teased, and she lifted a brow. "I'm adaptable," she replied. "You should see my calendar. I scheduled time for crisis, coffee, and you." He caught her hand, pressing her palm to his heart, and something fierce and ancient flickered in his eyes. "I want all of you in my world, not just tonight, or after a battle." Celine's breath caught, the city's pulse echoing through her veins, his skin, their joined hands, a promise blooming in the neon-washed dusk. Thunder rumbled again, distant this time, and she smiled, feeling the future stretch before them, wild, uncertain, and dazzling as the storm-lit skyline. Celine lingered in that fragile moment, sensing the world had shifted under her feet, their hands still pressed together, the pulse of his heart steady and certain beneath her fingers. A shout shattered the quiet, echoing off glass and steel as silhouettes spilled from the mouth of the alley. Not pack, not foes, but old faces cloaked in new intent, people she'd only known as adversaries. Dimitri, the tech mogul with fox-bright eyes and once a rival, stepped from the shadows, rain glinting on his tailored coat. "We're not here to fight," he announced, voice low but clear. "Unless you want old grudges haunting the city forever." Kai tensed, his wolf's energy shimmering at the edge of his skin, but his grip on Celine softened, thumb tracing reassurance across her hand. Then why come now? Dimitri's gaze flicked to Celine, appraising, wary, but not unkind. "Because this is bigger than us. The humans are watching. If we destroy each other, we lose the whole city. Some of us are tired of old blood debts." Celine noticed movement to her right. Mara, once her fiercest critic in the pack, emerging with a half smile, her black braids rain-slicked and wild. "We're not all blind to change, Alpha," Mara called, voice carrying its own gentle power. "We've seen what you two have become, what you could build." The rain softened, a hush falling over the assembled wolves and allies, their breath steaming in the neon-lit night. Kai drew himself taller, letting the Alpha's aura uncoil. Cool night wind, steel, and midnight promise. "You'd support peace, even after everything?" Mara nodded, stepping closer. "I'd rather fight for the city's soul than cling to broken pride. The old ways nearly cost us everything." Her eyes flicked to Celine, a silent apology hovering in their depths. Dimitri's lips quirked. "We bring leverage, contacts, tech, ears in the right places. You want to keep this truce, keep your mate safe? We can help, but we need trust." Celine felt Kai's pulse quicken under her palm, an unspoken question flickering between them. She drew a breath, letting rain bead on her lashes. Trust isn't given lightly, but maybe it starts tonight.
A distant siren wailed, underscoring the fragile peace. Dmitri offered his hand, and slowly Mara joined him, their alliance a wary knot tied in the city's shadows. Kai released Celine's hand only to intertwine their fingers, facing the new allies with a steady calm. We do this together, but any betrayal. Dmitri raised his hands, rainwater dripping from jeweled rings. No more secrets. The city's on the edge. We all feel it. Let's not push it over.
Celine studied their faces, strangers and enemies, now potential allies. She could taste the risk in the air, raw as ozone, but also the possibility, a future no one had dared imagine.
Mara's smile held a glimmer of hope. Let's begin with one night. See if we can keep the wolves from the door. Thunder rolled again, not as a threat, but a promise that the world was listening. Celine's heart soared with a reckless, fragile hope. Beneath the storm-bright skyline, old rivalries yielded, just a little to something newly forged, each heartbeat marking the uncertain, beautiful shape of what came next. By the time dawn bled through the rain-streaked glass, Celine lay awake, tracing the patterns pooling on the ceiling above Lucien's silent silhouette. The city hummed with its familiar neon ache, but inside their shared hush, the world felt suspended between breaths. Lucien's arm was draped over her waist, heavy with a tenderness that startled her every time she moved, as if his touch could anchor them both against the shifting tides outside his penthouse sanctuary. His scent, cedar and storm still clung to her skin, grounding her in the present. She studied the jagged scar that ran along his forearm, daring herself to reach out and brush it. "Does it hurt?" she murmured, barely louder than the rain against the window. He blinked, his eyes slow to open, deep gold flickering in the morning dim. "Not anymore," he said, voice roughened by sleep and something ancient. "Scars remind me I survived."
Celine's fingers lingered at the edge of the scar, a question trembling on her lips. "They also remind you what you lost?"
Lucien's hand closed over hers, gentle but unyielding. "Not everything is lost, Celine. Some things are just waiting to be claimed." Down below, sirens wailed, distant, yet close enough to prickle her nerves. The city's dangers, old threats from Lucien's rivals, never truly slumbered. Celine swallowed, fighting the urge to ask if they would ever be safe. He felt her tension and shifted closer, warmth radiating through the silk sheets. "You're thinking about them, the ones who want to tear us apart." She exhaled, voice unsteady. "They won't stop, will they?" His jaw tightened imperceptibly. "No, but neither will I." He tilted her chin so their eyes met, a storm brewing behind his. "Trust me, I'll keep you safe." Celine wanted to believe, and maybe she did, but trust, she'd learned, was a choice they'd have to make over and over. "What if you can't be everywhere?" she asked, voice barely a whisper. A faint, rueful smile curved his mouth. "Then I'll teach you to run with the wolves." Lightning traced silver cracks across the sky, illuminating the city's skyline and Lucien's face, sharp with resolve and something softer she dared not name. Her heart raced, equal parts fear and exhilaration. He pulled her closer, forehead pressed to hers. "We can't let fear decide for us, Celine. Not anymore." She closed her eyes and breathed in his promise. Salt and rain, and something wild beneath. For the first time, she wanted to believe she could be more than hunted. She could run beside him. Their hands tangled together beneath the sheets, fingers fitting as if by fate rather than accident. "I want to try," she admitted, and heard the tremor of hope in her own voice. Lucien's reply was a low rumble against her temple. Then we faced them together. Outside, the city climbed toward morning, a steady, relentless march of car horns and footsteps echoing up glass towers. Mara's words drifted through Celine's mind like a benediction. One night and then another, until trust became as rooted as fear. Celine rose, the press of Lucien's hand at her back, and together they faced the window. The storm was fading, but the world outside was no less dangerous. Still, she felt stronger with him, tempered, not tamed. She caught her reflection in the glass. A woman changed by darkness and promise, with a wolf's eyes at her side. Rainwater traced silver rivers down the glass, and Celine pressed her palm to the pane, her fingers cool and steady, heartbeat matching the city's restless pulse below.
Lucien's voice was soft in the hush between them. "They're waiting." She heard the weight behind his words, an invitation, but also a question. Could she return now that she was changed?
She nodded, breath ghosting a small circle on the glass, reluctance and hope warring in her chest. "I want them to know I'm all right, that I haven't disappeared."
The elevator hummed, carrying them down from the sanctuary of Lucien's penthouse. The harsh fluorescence flickered overhead, but his presence beside her was a calm, grounding pull. When the lobby doors parted, Mara stood waiting, flanked by Jonas and Mira, Celine's oldest friends. Their voices rose and softened as she stepped forward, uncertain on the threshold.
Mira rushed to her first, arms circling tightly, the scent of chamomile and city rain clinging to her sweater. "We were so scared, Celine. You just vanished."
Jonas's hand gripped her shoulder, eyes searching for injury, reassurance, any clue. "Are you really okay?" His voice cracked, fragile in its worry.
Celine drew a shaky breath. "I am. More than I thought I'd be. There's a lot I can't explain, but I'm still me." Her gaze flicked to Lucien, who lingered in the shadows, regal and unreadable.
Mara's gaze flicked between them, measuring trust and secrets in equal measure. "We saw things, Celine, things we can't forget."
Lucien's shadow loomed closer, his posture respectful but protective. "You don't have to understand everything, but know this. Celine is under my protection and my care."
The old pain in Mara's face eased a fraction, replaced by wary acceptance. "Is that what you call it?" she asked, voice laced with dry humor.
Celine laughed, the sound frayed and genuine. For the first time, her laughter didn't echo alone. Jonas grinned, relief softening the lines around his mouth. "Trust you to fall for a man with his own private army."
A beat passed, charged and light. Mira's eyes sparkled with tears and mischief. "He's brooding, but I think I like him. Is he going to join us for dinner?" Lucien's lips quirked, a rare smile. "If I'm invited." His gaze met Celine's, warm and questioning. Celine nodded, pulse fluttering. Both worlds can share a table tonight. They spilled from the lobby into the neon-brushed street, laughter mingling with the city's music. Celine felt the watching eyes, both human and shifter, but Lucien's arm settled at her waist, a silent promise. Rain slicked the pavement, reflecting their faces in broken fragments. The city was still dangerous, still divided, but Celine felt a bridge forming beneath their feet. As they walked, Mara leaned in, her voice low. "You trust him?" The question hung between the beat of footsteps. "I do," Celine replied, surprising herself with the certainty in her own voice. "He's part of my pack now. I'm part of his." At the corner, a shifter child darted by, golden eyes wide. Jonas offered a hesitant wave, and the boy grinned, vanishing into the crowd. Celine's heart squeezed, a thread of belonging weaving through everything unfamiliar. Mira squeezed her hand, whispering, "We'll figure this out. Together." The group ducked into the glow of a corner diner, rain trailing after them. Lucien lingered outside for a beat, scanning the skyline, then followed, his presence both shield and invitation. Inside, warmth and old music wrapped around them. Celine slid into a booth, flanked by friends and watched over by her wolf king, the city's heartbeat echoing in her bones. Here, in the fragile space between danger and acceptance, Celine finally believed they could belong to both worlds, human and shifter, fear and trust, old pain and new hope. Rain pattered against steamed glass as Celine traced a fingertip along the rim of her coffee mug, her eyes meeting Lucien's across the table, his gaze steady, unwavering, as though he saw through every mask she owned. He slid into the booth beside her, the subtle heat of his body seeping through her jacket, and his hand found hers under the table, anchoring her with a gentle squeeze that said, "I'm here. I'm not leaving."
The others, Mara's laughter, Jonah's low murmurs, blurred into the background. For a moment, the diner shrank down to just them, breathing together in time with the city's pulse.
"You ever wonder what it'd be like to just be?" Celine whispered, voice barely louder than the rain. No running, no hiding, no old debts trailing behind. Lucien's thumb brushed over her knuckles, slow and thoughtful. "Every night," he replied, the words husky with longing and promise. "But I think maybe we can make something new. for both of us. Celine's throat tightened. She wanted to believe, needed it. What does that look like? For you? For me? Her question hung between them, fragile as spun glass. The neon outside flickered scarlet and gold across Lucien's face. A place where you choose to stay, where you're safe but not caged. We could build it together. A pack, a family, by blood or by choice.
She blinked, the image unfurling behind her eyes. A home with windows thrown open to the city, laughter in the halls, the shadow of Lucien's wolf at her side, not as a secret, but as a foundation.
Her heart tumbled forward. I want that. I want to stop surviving and start living. For myself, for you. Maybe for others like us, too. He nodded, pride and vulnerability warring in his eyes. I've spent so long being king of shadows. You're the first thing that feels real, the first thing worth fighting for in the daylight. The clatter of plates, hiss of espresso, the low thrum of an old jukebox. Celine let it all fade, closing her eyes and breathing in the warmth, the cinnamon-laced air, the clean scent of Lucien's skin. His free hand rose, brushing a wet strand of hair from her cheek, trembling just enough to reveal his restraint. I want to wake up with you, not just dream.
She smiled, small and sure. I want that too. Waking up, facing the mess and the miracles. Together.
Outside, thunder shuddered, but inside, their world was soft, golden. Mara leaned in, grinning. This what shifter romance looks like. You two are making the rest of us jealous.
Jonah snorted, but affection warmed his voice. Let him have their fairy tale. Maybe it's time we all stopped hiding.
Celine laughed, the sound bright and honest. Maybe it's time we start dreaming out loud. What do you think, Lucien?
He grinned, wolf's hunger and man's tenderness entwined. I think we build something the city's never seen, where everyone belongs, where no one's hunted or alone.
Celine's fingers tightened on his. We could make it real. A new era. Harmony, not fear. Love, not hunger. He bent toward her, forehead brushing hers, breath mingling. With you, I believe it. The promise hung between them, silent lightning in the safe glow of the diner, future and hope blooming in the shelter of found family and faded ties. The moment was shattered by the vibration of Lucien's phone, harsh and sudden against the soft hum of neon. He glanced at the screen, jaw clenching as he read the message, shoulders tensing beneath his rain-damp shirt. Celine caught the shift in him, her own body thrumming with unease. What is it? She whispered, searching his face for clues, her heart stuttering with a fresh surge of dread and anticipation. Lucien slid from the booth, voice low. It's the council. They've summoned us tonight. The final trial. His hand lingered for a heartbeat on hers before he straightened, every line of him taut with purpose. Outside, the city was a labyrinth of glistening streets and shifting lights. The rain had slackened to a mist, silvering the air, painting halos around street lamps as they walked together into the night, side by side. Celine's mind raced. She could sense the challenge in every breath Lucien took, every measured step. His presence at her side was a lifeline and a promise, but also a test for both of them. They arrived at the skyscraper that housed the council, its mirrored surface fractured by flickering signs and the burning eyes of the city. The doors opened on silent hinges, swallowing them whole. Inside, the corridor was all steel and glass, moonlight sliding in long, cold stripes across the floor. Lucien's hand brushed her lower back, steadying, protective. No matter what, he murmured, we walk in as one. Celine nodded, pulse dancing in her throat. The elevator ride was wordless, tension humming between them, the city shrinking below, their fate rising above.
Steel doors opened on the penthouse. The council waited, arrayed in a semicircle old alphas, each gaze sharp as a blade, scented with the ozone of long-held power and the musk of secrets. Lucien's father sat at the apex, big and grave, a wolf's gold burning in his stare.
Lucien? Celine? The elder's voice rolled like distant thunder. You've chosen unity over tradition, but are you prepared to bleed for it? Lucien's reply was calm, but Celine felt the anger and pride beneath. We are. Test us. A woman with silver-streaked hair rose, eyes flicking over Celine. You will face the mirror shift.
Each must bear the other's pain, physical and spirit. There can be no secrets.
Celine swallowed, nerves clashing with resolve. Lucien caught her gaze, silent encouragement blazing in his eyes. Together, they stepped forward into the ritual space. The council intoned the ancient words. Shadows thickened, air crackling with energy. Celine's skin prickled as the circle closed, power knitting them together. Lucien squeezed her hand, jaw set. Pain hit like lightning hers, then his, each wound and scar unspooling. She felt his loneliest nights, the claws of his curse, the guilt and rage. He took on her hunger, her fear, her desperate hope. The agony was exquisite, shared and doubled, then softened by mutual understanding. She gasped, shuddering, but Lucien steadied her, his voice rough but sure. I see you. You're not alone. The air pulsed, heavy with sweat and tears, and the metallic tang of memories laid bare. Celine faced Lucien, trembling but unbroken. I'm here. I chose you. All of you. For a heartbeat, the council watched in silence. Then Lucien's father nodded, something ancient yielding at last. You have passed. Your bond unbreakable. Relief and exhaustion crashed over Celine. Lucien caught her as her knees threatened to buckle, holding her close, their shadows melding in the moonlit glass. She clung to him, still shaking, but knew in her marrow that nothing could break what they had forged tonight. Not curse, not counsel, not fate itself. Celine's head pressed against Lucien's chest as the council's footsteps faded into the rain-soaked city below, leaving only the soft thrum of his heart, steady and rare, beneath her ear. Warmth radiated from him, banishing the last bruised chill of fear and magic. She breathed in the mingled scent of cedar and burning ozone, relief settling into her bones like a balm. Lucien's hand trembled as it swept over her hair, his voice breaking the hush raw, reverent. It's over, Celine. You set us free. Her lips curved, trembling, the reality like dawn flooding her veins. We set ourselves free, she murmured, her fingers finding his in the uncertain dark. Outside the tower's high glass, neon blended with the first blush of sunrise, painting streaks of violet and gold across the rain-drenched skyline, new light for a new promise. Lucien tilted her chin, searching her face as if memorizing every tired line and tear track, every shadow and spark in her eyes. I thought I was doomed to lose control, to lose you. And I thought I was alone, Celine whispered, her throat thick. But we're neither. Not anymore. He brushed his thumb over her cheek, careful, as if afraid she might vanish in the morning light. You were never alone. Not truly. I think I've always felt you moving toward me, even before I knew you. For a moment, only the city's waking heartbeat filled the space. The hiss of tires on wet pavement, the distant pulse of nightlife fading beneath the rising sun. Celine drew in a shaky breath, wonder and exhaustion mingling. What now, Lucien? The curse is broken, but the world is still out there. He laughed softly, the sound low and ragged, but edged in joy. Now, we live. We fight, if we must. But together, if you'll stay. She pressed her palm to his heart, feeling the wild, loyal drumbeat. I choose you, every day, every hour, even when it's hard. A slow, disbelieving smile dawned on Lucien's lips. The haunted weight in his eyes finally started to lift, replaced by hope sharp as sunrise. Then come home with me. Celine nodded, tears stinging her vision, but her smile was unbreakable. Lead the way, Wolf King. He wrapped his arms around her, lifting her off her trembling feet, spinning her once in the glow of the city's new day, laughter echoing off the steel and glass. Rain still tapped against the windows, softer now, a benediction. The tower was empty, but for them, a kingdom reborn in their embrace. Celine pressed her forehead to his, closing her eyes and letting the warmth and certainty settle through her. Whatever comes, we'll face it, together. Lucien's answering vow was a whisper and a promise, binding as moonlight. Together. Always. Outside, the city glimmered with possibility, and Celine knew, finally, fiercely, that fate was no longer a chain, but a path she had chosen. Hand in hand, they stepped into the new dawn, leaving behind the ghosts and curses, bound by something stronger than fate, the love they'd fought for. If you felt the magic in every stolen glance and stormlit kiss, subscribe now. There's so much more for Celine, Lucien, and the world they're about to change.